can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie, the Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Today's video, we're going to be talking about Gargoyles Volume 1, written by Greg Weisman, with art by George Cambadeas and colors by George Cambadeas, Julia Giacomino, Giovanni La Pietra, Andrea Izzo, Josh Rodriguez, and letters by Jeff Eckelberry. Gargoyles Volume 1 wears a lot of hats, and I'm gonna go into right now. If you're someone who is as familiar with the Gargoyles animated series, which probably needs no introduction, but I'm gonna give one anyway. A story about a clan of gargoyles who once lived among humans but were displaced from their ancestral home after some what can only be described as human fuckery, find themselves after the effects of a magic spell suddenly being in the modern day. And by modern day, I'm talking about the early 90s when the animated series originally came out. This comic assumes you at least know some of that, or at the very least, you are vaguely familiar with some of that. Now, while this comic does assume that, it does also technically assume you've read some of the old comics that Gargoyles used to publish under. This was a comic series that came out in like the early to mid-aughts, and it was a direct continuation of the original animated series. This comic also assumes you might have been following along for that. But the good news is the first 6 issues of Gargoyles, while it does assume you know a lot of this stuff, it does take each issue to remind you or get you up to speed if you are, for whatever reason, unfamiliar. So if you're a person who is going into this cold, or you have no knowledge of Gargoyles prior to seeing this very video, you don't have to necessarily worry about being left in the dark. The book is going to do a really good job of making sure you get caught up. You won't be caught up in the first issue, but by the time you get to the end of this first trade, you should at least be mostly aware of what all is going on and what has transpired over the animated series and the SLI comics run. Not everything, but the stuff that you need to know, the stuff that is important. Now, that being said, regardless of where you come in on Gargoyles, whether you're a fan of the animated series, you were a fan of the comics, or you're a brand new fan, you will find a lot to love here with this first trade. And I say that because the trade just kind of jumps right in. It is pretty much an in media res jumping on point. We basically pick up with the Gargoyles already having been established, already having had most of their major battles with people like Xanatos and Puck and Demona and the Pack, Macbeth and various and sundry other characters. That said, what Greg does really well here is that he kicks us off with a story that involves one of the principal character's family members, a character by the name of Talon. For those unfamiliar, Talon is the brother of Eliza Maza, who is the love interest of Goliath. And yes, you heard me correctly. While it was one of those things that was largely hemmed and hawed about in the animated series, something that happened over the course of the SLI comics and has actually been made canon here in the Dynamite Comics Gargoyle stories, is that Eliza Maza and Goliath, they are dating. That's a thing. So let's go ahead and get that out of the way. And that's not even really a spoiler. I mean, it's something you literally see at the beginning of the first issue of this. That said, jumping back over into the plot of it, Talon and another character from the animated series, Maggie the cat, they have had a child. And 2 of the villains from the animated series, they have abducted said child. And this basically kicks off all of the shenanigans going forward into the next 5 issues, starting from issue 1. You have characters like Dr. Anton Zavarius and the Goliath clone Thalog, who are up to their usual shenanigans, and the Gargoyles have to act. A child has been abducted, and they need to get that child back. And that's not really the only thing. The Gargoyles have a lot to juggle in the first 6 issues of the series alone, and I think it's all handled about roughly with the skill of a circus juggler. It's done very well, and I don't ever feel like anything is distracting. No plot thread seems to not make any sense. All of it makes sense in the context of what it is that you're reading. When we get into the story, we discover that the clan of Gargoyles, that while they have moved along in time, they have evolved from that animated series, they've also grown in some ways that have caused them to, I won't necessarily say fall apart, but it has caused them to not be exactly the same as what they once were. Right now, Brooklyn, probably one of the more popular gargoyles, he is preparing to become the next leader of the gargoyles, and ultimately being next in line to replace Goliath should something happen, when it ever happens. Not only is he being groomed to be the next leader, he also has a family of his own. He actually has a wife and a child. That was something that came up during the SLI comics. Broadway has found love by way of Goliath's daughter, Angela, and Lexington is embracing his realization of being gay. And before anyone freaks out about Lexington suddenly being, made gay or whatever, this is actually something that was, even by the creator of Gargoyles, Greg Weisman's own admission, something they wanted to do with the original animated series, but they weren't allowed to do. This is something that was also coded into the character since they couldn't openly say it. And honestly, going back and watching the old animated series, yeah, it's there. You can try and deny that it's there, but it's very squarely there. All in all the characters, regardless of where they are right now in this current iteration, they will all be familiar to you on some level. Goliath reads just like Goliath. That's actually one of the things I love about this, is that when you read Goliath's dialogue, I can literally hear Keith David's voice carrying this character. Even though I'm just reading text, the characters like Elisa, Hudson, and I already mentioned Broadway, and Brooklyn, and Lexington, so on and so forth. They all read like you would imagine them. Even Xanatos, who isn't really a major factor or player in these first 6 issues, yeah, even he does. Even he reads the way you expect. And I also love what Greg is doing here with this, because not only are they dealing with the stuff I mentioned earlier, like Dr. Anton Savarius and Thalog, but that all just kind of snowballs into dealing with the Dracons. The Dracons are actually becoming more of a major player in these first 6 issues, just by virtue of the fact that they're starting a gang war and trying to frame the gargoyles for why it's happening. Not only that, there's even some shades of, like, I know this is mostly a channel that primarily deals in X-Men related stuff, but one of the key plot points of the first 6 issues is Goliath interacting with humans, because at this particular point, humans are starting to learn that gargoyles are a very real thing, and it's starting to cause some tension between humans and gargoyles. Now, I will say, if there's any one thing I will forewarn you about, if you come into this comic expecting to see Demona, you're going to be largely disappointed. Demona does not feature in the first 6 issues on any level. As a matter of fact, she does not appear until the 7th issue, which is at the very beginning of the next volume. So yeah, you're not going to see Demona in this, but trust me, once you do, you are going to be very happy that you did. But for right now, I'm only really focusing on volume 1 and what all you can find there. All in all, fantastic story overall. I loved it. I love how, even with everything going on with Goliath and Brooklyn and how he's being groomed to be next in line to take over the clan should something happen to Goliath, something that is on the horizon of becoming a very real possibility, it's nice to see how much Brooklyn has grown, and he's still trying to find himself as a leader type of character, and also seeing at the same time how much Goliath has so much trust in Brooklyn, but also trust in what I can only describe as humanity's capacity to believe that the gargoyles aren't entirely monsters, that they're not just inherently evil creatures, that they're actually human, and something that will also be explored even further in the next volume. But once again, we're staying largely in volume 1 here. But all in all, the idea of the gargoyles being hated and feared for being different is a very huge narrative in these first 6 issues, and is something that just, it reads so very well. And of course it does, because you have the series creator writing the comic. I mean, so of course it's gonna feel just like it should. I will say that while yes, there has always been confusion about whether or not Gargoyles, the Goliath Chronicles, which is effectively the third season of Gargoyles, but is also technically a reboot. It's very weird. You just kind of have to go with it. But point of the matter is, even though technically that series is not considered canon, there are some aspects and elements you might find in this comic that may be reminiscent of the Gargoyles Goliath Chronicles series. But that is just one of those things. I feel Greg is just taking those things and just really putting them there in a way that probably makes a little more sense than what they might have before. But all in all, fantastic comic, and I could not recommend it enough. If you want to check out this comic, I have links in the description as well as pinned comment below. You can go pick this up. But regardless of where you are with Gargoyles, if you've already checked it out, let me know what you think about it. And if you have yet to check it out but are going to, come back here and let me know what you think about it once you read it, whatever. You can actually let me know here in the comments. You can also follow me on Threads, where I'll be posting exclusively on social media going forward. So if you follow me on Twitter, that's cool. I appreciate it. Love the love. But I will also be on Threads. That's where I will actually be. That's a decision I have recently made. So make sure there'll be a link to the Threads down below as well. So go check out all that stuff. And yeah, anyway, until next time, y'all know the drill. Peace out. You guessed it, obligatory channel outro time. If you're not subscribed to the channel, consider doing so. Clicking that subscribe button and tapping that notification bell ensures that you get more videos just like this one, and you don't miss any of my other content that I drop throughout the week, plus my live streams every Thursday and Saturday. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you click that like button, keep it plus ultra, and sound off in the comments.